Welcome back to Legends May Live, where we explore the strange, the mysterious, and the eerie. I'm Drew, and today we're taking a look at a mysterious disappearance filled with bizarre last moments. West Texas, a place where the land stretches endlessly, the roads are long and empty, and the night swallows everything whole. It was here, along a desolate highway, that a young man named Brandon Lawson disappeared without a trace. What happened to him that night? Was he running from something? From someone? Or did he slip into the darkness, claimed by forces we may never understand? At only 26 years old, Brandon Lawson's family had grown fast, and the weight of his responsibilities was a lot for anyone. He had 4 kids, financial struggles, and his job was physically demanding and required long hours. But still, he and his longtime girlfriend, Ledessa, they handled them as best as anyone could expect. There were the occasional arguments, but they always managed to work things out and keep their heads above the water. On August 6, 2013, Brandon started his new job working as an oil field man in San Angelo, Texas. He had worked in oil for years, but this opportunity was going to bring him more money to his and his girlfriend's financial struggles. Though Brandon still had an outstanding warrant for drug charges hanging over his head, this was at least one big step for a better life for himself, his girlfriend, and their 4 children. On August 9th, 3 days into the new job, Brandon pulls into the driveway. He's exhausted, dirty, he smells like oil. He knew oil work, but this was a new environment, new people, new procedures. It wasn't bad, but he was really just worn down physically and at this point mentally too. He dragged himself out of his truck and came inside. The kids immediately swarm him, excited that their dad is home, and for a moment the stress of the day just kind of melted away as he thinks, this is what it's all for. Then Brandon turns, greets Ledessa, and then he goes to get a quick shower before sitting down for dinner. Somewhere in the evening, though, he and Ledessa would get into an argument. Brandon said he wasn't mad, but just overwhelmed and needed to clear his head for a bit. So he grabs his keys, his wallet, and his phone and tells Ledessa that he's going to take a drive and see his dad. She didn't want him to leave, but he was insistent that it was just all too much and he needed to clear his head. He would spend a few hours on the road, talk to his dad, and everything would be okay. He just really needed this right now. So he got back in his truck, headed out for his father's house in Crowley, Texas, which was about 3.5-hour drive for him. He also called his dad along the way to let him know he was coming. And Ledessa called Brandon's brother Kyle and told him about the argument and how Brandon left. But they both really thought it just wasn't that big of a deal. Brandon would cool off and he'd be back soon. But a little while later, Brandon called Kyle himself to let him know that he had ran out of gas on Highway 277 near Bonte, Texas, and he asked if he could help him out, to which Kyle, a little bit annoyed at this point to be in the middle of all this, especially at midnight, said, yeah, you know what, sure, I'll bring you some gas. Then they hung up the phone and Kyle called Ledessa. He let her know what was happening and she said that she would leave a gas can on the porch for him to come pick up to take to Brandon. But before Kyle could make it to Brandon, things got really strange.
911, what's your emergency?
At 12:54 a.m., just 4 minutes after his call with Kyle, Brandon makes this frantic 911 call. And when the dispatcher answered, Brandon just says, I'm in the middle of a field. I'm out here. Just pushed some guys over. Right here going toward Abilene. On both sides. My truck ran out of gas. There's one car here. The guy's chasing me. Please hurry. The dispatcher then asks if he needs an ambulance, to which Brandon, almost yelling, says, no, I need the cops. Then the dispatcher can hear nothing but muffled speech for a few seconds, and the call just abruptly cuts off. Shortly after, Kyle called Brandon again at about 1:10 a.m. to let him know that he was on his way with the gas. But Brandon isn't making much sense. He sounds panicked and disoriented. It's hard to make out what he's trying to say, but he mentions that he's in a field bleeding, and he tells Kyle to run from the police. Kyle keeps trying to get Brandon to tell him what happened, but the phone cuts out. So at this point, Kyle and his girlfriend Audrey, who was riding with him to get the gas, they're both confused and worried, but they're able to quickly find Brandon's truck, and they get out to call for Brandon, but he's nowhere to be found. The truck doors are locked, and he's not inside, so Kyle tries calling again, but this time it just goes to voicemail. And about that time, he can see the sheriff's deputy pulling up onto the scene, but before the car stops, Kyle's phone's ringing again. It's Brandon. He answers, asking Brandon where he is, but he's met with whispers that are hard to make out. It's something like, "I'm 10 minutes up the road," but the rest is too hard to make out. Then the call drops again. Kyle, Audrey, and the police officer are searching the area for Brandon, but there's no sign. There was no blood like he had mentioned, and no footprints or signs of a struggle either. Initially, Kyle thought that Brandon was likely hiding because of his warrant, so he didn't really expect to find him until the police left. So everything just really looked like he had just locked up the truck and casually left on his own. Once the police wrapped up the scene, drove away, Kyle thought to himself, okay, now Brandon's going to come out of hiding. We're going to find him. So he and Audrey continued to drive around looking for Brandon, trying to call out the window to him, trying to call him on his phone, but there's no answer. And eventually his phone stopped ringing, so they thought that either his phone was turned off or the battery died. Brandon wasn't found that night, nor the next, or the next. And in fact, it took several days before the police started officially searching for him. But at this point, it had rained, so footprints and scent trails were likely erased, and police never found any signs of Brandon. There were no clothes, no phone, no tracks, or really any indication that he was ever there other than his truck. Then, just a few months later, in early 2014, police stopped their active search in Brandon's disappearance. And to this day, there are only questions. Kyle eventually revealed that Brandon had taken methamphetamine earlier the day of his disappearance, though it's unclear how much. Now, meth can cause paranoia, hallucinations, and erratic behavior, which would explain why he thought he was being chased. But it doesn't explain why he vanished so suddenly without a trace. In 2022, a team of private investigators were searching on private property with a cadaver dog, near the area that Brandon disappeared, when the dog alerted to skeletal remains. That prompted the case to be reopened. As of now, the remains have not officially been confirmed to belong to Brandon, but it's expected that they will be. Where did Brandon Lawson go? What happened on that lonely stretch of highway? Was it just a bad trip that led to him succumbing to the elements? If he was out there, running for his life, why did no one find him? And if he wasn't, then what really happened in the middle of that field? And if the remains are his, why was his body never found until now? If not, where is he? Some mysteries stay with us. They haunt the roads we travel. They whisper in the night air. And they remind us that sometimes the darkest stories are the ones that have no ending at all. That's it for today's episode of Legends May Live. If you enjoyed today's story, please be sure to like, subscribe, and send it to a friend who loves a mystery. Until next time, keep your eyes open and keep a lookout, because the world is much stranger than we know.